Don't come to my house, Dad. You'll embarrass us. Those 10 words changed everything. December 15th, 2023, 3:47 p.m. My daughter Sarah's voice, cold as winter steel, cutting through my heart like I was nothing. I'm Robert Miller, 65 years old, built a $50 million real estate empire from nothing, lost it all, saving my wife from cancer. And now my own daughter was throwing me away like yesterday's trash. But you know what I did when she hung up on me? I smiled. Not because I was happy, because I remembered something Sarah had forgotten. Something that was about to turn her perfect little world upside down. See, when you've built an empire once, you learn a few things about power, about leverage, about who really owns what. And Sarah? She was about to get the education of her lifetime. Subscribe if you believe family loyalty should go both ways, because this story is just getting started. Let me paint you a picture of what my relationship with Sarah used to be like. 15 years ago, when she graduated college, I handed her the keys to a brand new BMW. Not leased. Bought. $43,000 cash. When she got into Wharton for her MBA, I wrote a check for the full tuition. $240,000. No student loans, no debt. Just a father investing in his daughter's future. Her wedding to Brad Davidson in 2019. I paid for everything. The venue at the Ritz-Carlton, the flowers, the photographer, the honeymoon in Italy. $180,000 for one perfect day. And when they bought their first house, a modest 3-bedroom in Scarsdale, I provided the down payment, $500,000. Because that's what fathers do, right? We build foundations for our children. But here's what I didn't know then. Success changes people. And my daughter was about to change in ways I never saw coming. It started small. Phone calls that went unreturned, text messages left on read, holiday invitation that somehow got lost in the mail. Then Brad got promoted to senior partner at his hedge fund. Suddenly they needed a bigger house, more space, a better address. They found that mansion in Harrison's $7,200,000 of Italian marble and imported crystal chandeliers. Did they ask me for help? Number. By then they had their own money, their own circle, their own world. A world that apparently didn't include a father who wore 15-year-old suits and drove a 2008 Honda Civic with 245,000 miles on it. The first time Sarah was truly ashamed of me was at her company Christmas party 2 years ago. I showed up in my best clothes, which admittedly weren't much. A JCPenney suit I'd bought for my wife's funeral. Payless shoes that were starting to crack at the seams. I watched Sarah's face when I walked in. The flash of embarrassment. The quick whisper to Brad. The way she steered me toward the corner, away from her colleagues. "Dad," she said, her voice tight with forced cheerfulness. "Maybe next time you could, dress up a little more." I should have seen it then. The beginning of the end. But I love my daughter. I made excuses. She's under stress. She's building a career. She'll come around. Last Christmas was when I knew for certain I was losing her. I'd driven up to their mansion. Yes, that same $7 million mansion carrying presents for my grandchildren. 5-year-old Emma and 3-year-old Michael. Kids I barely got to see anymore. Sarah met me at the door. Didn't invite me in. "Dad, this isn't a good time. Brad's parents are here, and we're having a very important dinner with some investors." Through the window, I could see the dining room. Crystal glasses catching the light from a chandelier that probably cost more than I made in 2 years. Men in $1,000 suits. Women draped in jewelry that could have fed a family for months. "Maybe I could just say hello to the kids?" I asked. "They're napping," she lied. I could hear Emma laughing upstairs. That's when I knew. I wasn't just unwelcome. I was an embarrassment. A reminder of where they'd come from. A living, breathing symbol of everything they'd moved beyond. But you want to know the real irony? While Sarah was climbing her social ladder, I was keeping meticulous records of every dollar I'd ever given her. Every check, every wire transfer, every gift. Call it a businessman's habit. Call it old-fashioned bookkeeping. but I had documentation of everything. $2,700,000. That's what I'd invested in Sarah's life over 15 years, not including the interest I could have earned, not including the opportunities I'd given up, just the raw cash that had flowed from my accounts to hers. And now she was telling me I didn't belong in her world. But here's something else Sarah didn't know about her old man. When you've spent 30 years in real estate, you develop relationships, connections, people who owe you favors, people like Tom Walsh, the president of First National Bank. Tom and I had done dozens of deals together back in my Empire days. He'd financed my first shopping center, my first office building, my first taste of real success. And Tom Walsh? He was still taking my calls, which is why on December 16th, 2023, exactly one day after Sarah told me I wasn't welcome in her house, I found myself sitting in Tom's mahogany-paneled office, asking a very specific question. "Tom," I said, "I need you to look up a property for me. $7,200,000 mansion in Harrison. Owners are Sarah and Brad Davidson." Tom's fingers flew across his keyboard. His face went pale. "Jesus, Bob, this property, it's in foreclosure proceedings, has been for 3 months. They're 90 days behind on payments." I leaned back in the leather chair, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Power. "Tom," I said quietly, "I want to buy the debt. But before I tell you about buying that debt, you need to hear the full conversation from December 15th. Because what Sarah said to me that day wasn't just cruel, it was calculated, designed to destroy whatever was left of my dignity. I recorded the call, old habit from my business days. Always keep records. You never know when you'll need them. The conversation started innocently enough. I'd called to confirm Christmas dinner plans, like I had every year for the past decade. "Hi, sweetheart. Just wanted to check what time you'd like me there on Christmas." Silence. Then that sigh. That exasperated, put-upon sigh that told me everything I needed to know before she even spoke. "Dad, we need to talk." "Of course. What's on your mind?" "Brad and I have been discussing this, and, well, we think it would be better if you didn't come this year." I felt the air leave my lungs. "I'm sorry, what?" "Look, Dad, I'm going to be honest with you because that's what you taught me, right? To be direct?" "Yes, but you don't fit anymore. The people we're having over, they're Brad's partners from the hedge fund. Their wives. These are sophisticated people, Dad. People who matter to our future." I gripped the phone tighter. "And I don't matter?" "That's not what I'm saying. It's just, look at yourself. That old suit you wear to everything. Those shoes with the duct tape. The way you tell the same old stories about building houses and fixing foundations." In the background, I could hear Brad's voice. "Tell him about the wine thing." "Oh, right. And Dad, when you came to our anniversary dinner last month, you ordered beer at Le Bernardin. Do you know how embarrassing that was? The sommelier looked like you'd slapped him." "Sarah, I don't understand wine. I've never pretended to." "Exactly. That's exactly the problem. You represent everything we've moved beyond. The blue-collar background, the simple thinking, the small-town values that just don't work in our world anymore." I could hear more voices now. Brad definitely, but others too. Like I was on speakerphone. Like this conversation was entertainment for their sophisticated friends. Are there people listening to this?" Sarah's laugh was sharp, brittle. "Dad, you're being paranoid." But honestly, even if there were, what would it matter? Everyone already knows how different our backgrounds are. Brad's voice came through clearer now. "Sarah, tell him about the Christmas budget." "Right. So here's the thing, Dad. We're spending $47,000 on Christmas this year. The decorations alone cost $15,000. The catered dinner's 8 courses, prepared by a chef who's worked for celebrities. We have wine that costs more per bottle than you probably spend on groceries in a month. I don't need expensive things, Sarah. I just want to see my grandchildren. And that's another thing. Emma and Michael, they're at an age where they're starting to notice differences. Last time you visited, Emma asked me why Grandpa's car makes funny noises. Michael wanted to know why your clothes look old. My heart was breaking, but my mind was recording every word, every inflection, every casual cruelty. Sarah, those children are my legacy. They're all I have left of your mother. Don't bring Mom into this. Mom would understand. Mom would want us to succeed, to rise above where we came from. That's when I heard Brad clearly, probably thinking he was whispering, "Thank God we don't have to pretend anymore." And Sarah's response, "I know, right?" It's such a relief. The words hit me like physical blows, but what came next was worse. "Dad, you have to understand. In our social circle, family history matters. People know about bloodlines, about inherited class. When they see you, they see limitation. They see the ceiling we came from, the ceiling I broke through to give you opportunities, which I'm grateful for. But now I need to move beyond that. I need to create a new narrative, a better narrative, one that doesn't include stories about Grandpa the contractor and his bootstraps philosophy." Another voice in the background, female this time. "Is that your father? Still going on about the good old days?" Sarah giggled. Actually giggled. "Dad, I have to go. We're in the middle of a very important dinner party. People are waiting." "What about Christmas?" "I told you." "It's not happening. Maybe we can do lunch sometime in January. Somewhere quiet, away from our usual places. Sarah, please. I'm your father. And I love you for that. But love doesn't mean you have to embarrass the people you care about. Sometimes love means knowing when to step back." The line went quiet for a moment. Then Brad's voice, crystal clear. "Finally." I was wondering when she'd grow a backbone. That's when Sarah hung up. I sat in my studio apartment, staring at my phone, replaying those words over and over again. Thank God we don't have to pretend anymore. Finally. I was wondering when she'd grow a backbone. $47,000 on Christmas, more than I made in 6 months now. Wine that cost more per bottle than my monthly grocery budget. A narrative that didn't include her own father. I looked around my tiny apartment, at the Murphy bed that folded into the wall, at the single window that faced an alley, at the framed photos of Sarah through the years, graduation, wedding, holding my grandchildren, and I made a decision. If Sarah wanted to create a new narrative, I'd help her write one. That night, I did something I'd never done in my 65 years on this earth. I stopped being a father and started being a businessman. I sat at my tiny kitchen table, the same folding table I'd bought at Walmart for $39, and opened my laptop. The same laptop I'd used to run a $50 million empire, now reduced to checking my checking account balance of $3,214. But here's what Sarah didn't know about her old man. When you build an empire, you don't just build it with money. You build it with information, with connections, with the ability to see opportunities where others see problems. And I was about to see the biggest opportunity of my life. First, I pulled up everything I could find about Sarah and Brad Davidson, social media profiles, LinkedIn connections, public records, property filings, the house in Harrison, $7,200,000, purchased in March 2022, monthly mortgage payment, $38,400, property taxes, $67,000 annually. That was just the beginning. I dug deeper. Brad's hedge fund performance, his investment history, his crypto trading accounts. Because yes, when you know where to look, everything leaves a digital footprint. What I found made my blood run cold. Brad Davidson wasn't the financial genius Sarah thought she'd married. He was a gambler, and like most gamblers, he'd been losing big. Cryptocurrency investments, NFT purchases, high-risk tech stocks that had crashed and burned. Over the past 18 months, Brad had lost $1,800,000 of their personal money chasing get-rich-quick schemes. The hedge fund was hemorrhaging clients. 3 major investors had pulled out in the past 6 months. Brad's annual bonus, The money they'd been counting on to cover their extravagant lifestyle had been cut by 70%. But they'd kept spending like nothing had changed. The $47,000 Christmas budget Sarah had bragged about, it was going on credit cards. The Italian marble in their foyer, financed. The twin BMW X7s in their driveway, leased at $4,000 a month combined. They were leveraged to the hilt, living on borrowed time and borrowed money, and I was about to own all of it. I picked up my phone and called Tom Walsh at home. It was 11:30 p.m., but Tom and I went back 30 years. He'd take my call. "Bob, everything all right?" "Tom, I need to move fast on that Davidson property we discussed. How much to buy the full debt?" Papers rustling on his end. "Let me see. Outstanding balance is $6,847,293.15. But Bob, if you're thinking of helping them out..." "I'm not helping them, Tom. I'm buying the debt. Full amount. Cash silence on the other end." "Then, Jesus, Bob. I thought you were... after Martha's medical bills." "I'm not broke, Tom. I'm liquid poor. There's a difference." And there was. When I'd liquidated my empire to pay for my wife's cancer treatment, I'd been smart about it. I'd kept one property, one single, boring, unglamorous strip mall in Yonkers that nobody wanted to buy. It generated just enough income to keep me alive, but not enough to attract attention. What I hadn't told anyone, not even Sarah, was that 6 months ago, Amazon had approached me about turning that strip mall into a distribution center. The offer? $12 million. I'd been sitting on the contract, unsure what to do with my life. Too old to rebuild an empire, too young to just wait around to die. But now I knew exactly what that money was for. "Tom, I'll wire the funds first thing Monday morning. I want every piece of paper, every missed payment, every legal notice. I want to own this debt completely." "Bob, are you sure about this? This is your daughter we're talking about." I looked at the photos on my kitchen table. Sarah in her cap and gown. Sarah in her wedding dress. Sarah holding my grandson for the first time. Then I remembered her voice from earlier that evening. "You represent everything we've moved beyond." "Yes, Tom, I'm sure. And I want the foreclosure proceedings to continue exactly as scheduled. No delays, no extensions, by the book." "When do you want them notified of the ownership change?" I smiled for the second time that day. "Christmas Eve. I want them to get the notice on Christmas Eve." "Bob." "She wanted me gone from her house, Tom." Consider it granted. I hung up the phone and sat in the silence of my studio apartment. Outside, snow was beginning to fall, covering the city in a blanket of white. In 3 days, I would own my daughter's life. But Sarah didn't know that yet. Monday morning, December 18th, 2023. 9:17 a.m. I walked into First National Bank wearing my best suit. The same JCPenney special Sarah had been so embarrassed by, and carrying a cashier's check for $12,400,000. The Amazon deal had closed Friday afternoon. Fastest real estate transaction of my career. They wanted that distribution center badly enough to waive inspections, appraisals, even the 30-day closing period. Tom Walsh met me in his office, the foreclosure papers spread across his mahogany desk like a battle plan. "Bob, I have to ask one more time. Are you absolutely certain about this? Once we transfer ownership of this debt, there's no going back." I picked up the documents. 7 pages of legal text that would give me complete control over my daughter's life. The power to foreclose, the power to evict, the power to take everything she valued more than her own father. "Tom, do you remember what you told me when I started in real estate 35 years ago?" "I told you a lot of things. You said business is just relationships with consequences. Well, this is a relationship with consequences. I signed my name on every page. Robert James Miller. The same signature that had built shopping centers and office buildings and apartment complexes across 3 counties. Now it would tear down my daughter's world." "Wire transfer completed," Tom said, checking his computer. "As of 9:43 a.m., you are the sole owner of the Davidson property debt. Outstanding balance, $6,847,293.15. $293.15. Interest rate? 7.2% annually. That's, let me calculate, approximately $49,000 in monthly interest alone. I did the math in my head. Sarah and Brad hadn't made a payment in 4 months. By the time I was done with them, they'd owe me close to $7.5 million. What's the foreclosure timeline? Standard 90-day notice was served 3 weeks ago. They have 67 days remaining before the sheriff's sale, unless, of course, the debt owner chooses to accelerate the process, which I can do. As the debt holder, you have full discretionary authority. You could demand immediate payment. You could extend the timeline. You could forgive the debt entirely. Tom paused. Or you could proceed exactly as scheduled. I smiled. Let's proceed exactly as scheduled. But I want them to know about the ownership change. When? Today. I want the notice hand-delivered to their home address. I want Sarah to sign for it personally. Tom nodded and made a note in the file. Anything else? Yes, I want copies of every financial record you have on them. Credit reports, bank statements, payment history, everything. Bob, some of that information is confidential. Tom, I own their debt. That makes me their creditor. I have legal rights to assess their ability to pay. 30 minutes later, I walked out of First National Bank carrying a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse. Inside were the complete financial records of my daughter and son-in-law. It made for fascinating reading. Sarah's American Express bill for November, $14,637. Items included a single dinner at Daniel Restaurant, $847, a handbag from Bergdorf Goodman, $2,400, and something called wellness coaching, $1,200 per session. Brad's investment portfolio, down 63% over the past year. His crypto wallet showed a balance of $47.31, down from $2.4 million 18 months earlier. Their joint checking account, overdrawn by $3,200. But the real treasure was their text message records. Yes, Tom's bank could access those through their financial monitoring software for high-risk accounts. Brad to Sarah, November 23rd. We need to talk to your dad about money again. My bonus got cut. Sarah to Brad, November 23rd. Absolutely not. I'd rather lose the house than grovel to him. Brad to Sarah, December 10th. The foreclosure notice is real. We have 90 days. Sarah to Brad, December 10th. Then we'll figure something else out. Maybe your parents? Brad to Sarah, December 14th. My parents said no. It's your dad or bankruptcy. Sarah to Brad, December 15th. I'll handle my father. Time to cut him loose anyway. He's become an embarrassment. I read that exchange 3 times, sitting in my Honda Civic in the bank parking lot. Time to cut him loose anyway. An embarrassment. At 2:30 p.m., my phone rang. Sarah's number. Dad, we need to talk. Something very strange just happened. Hello, sweetheart. How are you? Did you do something with our mortgage? A man just came to the house with papers saying you own our loan now. I let the silence stretch out. In negotiation, silence is power. Dad, are you there? I'm here, Sarah. So, is it true? Do you own our mortgage? I own your debt. Yes, all $6,847,293.15 of it. But how? You're living in that tiny apartment. You don't have that kind of money. You'd be surprised what your old man is capable of when he sets his mind to it. Dad, if this is about Christmas... This isn't about Christmas, Sarah. This is about respect. This is about family. This is about consequences. What do you want? I want you to remember something your mother used to say. She used to tell you that every choice has a price. Well, sweetheart, it's time to pay yours. You can't be serious. You're going to foreclose on your own daughter? Sarah, you told me I don't fit in your world anymore. You told me I represent everything you've moved beyond. Well, congratulations. You're about to move beyond your house, too. Dad, please. We can work this out. We can... The foreclosure proceeds exactly as scheduled. 67 days and counting, unless, of course, you'd like to pay the full amount immediately. $7 million? Dad, you know we don't have that kind of money. Then I guess we'll see you in court. I hung up the phone and sat in my car, watching the snow fall on Westchester County. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like myself again. Sarah called back 17 times that day. I answered on the 18th call. Dad, please. We need to talk about this like adults. I'm listening. Can we meet somewhere? Face to face? This is too important for phone calls. I could hear the desperation creeping into her voice. The same tone she'd used as a little girl when she'd broken something and was hoping I wouldn't notice. Where did you have in mind? What about that diner you used to take me to? Murphy's on Route 9? We could... No, Sarah. If you want to talk, you come to my place. Silence. Then, your apartment? That's right. The studio apartment you're so embarrassed by. The one with the Murphy bed and the single window facing an alley. Dad, that's not... it's not very private. What if someone sees me there? And there it was. Even in crisis, even when facing the loss of everything, Sarah was still worried about appearances. Then I guess this conversation is over. Wait. Fine. I'll come. When? Now. She arrived 47 minutes later, driving her BMW X7 that cost more than most people's houses. I watched from my window as she parked, looked around nervously, then practically sprinted to the building entrance like she was entering a crack house. When she knocked on my door, I took my time answering. Sarah stood in my doorway, wearing a $5,000 coat and shoes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. But for the first time in years, she looked small, vulnerable, like the little girl who used to crawl into my lap when she was scared. Dad, Sarah. She stepped inside and immediately started looking around with barely concealed horror. The folding table, the mini fridge, the single chair I'd bought at a garage sale for $3. How do you live like this? Very comfortably, actually. Sit down. She perched on the edge of my bed like she was afraid of catching something. Dad, about the mortgage thing. We can work something out, right? You're my father. You wouldn't actually foreclose on me. Why wouldn't I? Because you love me. I do love you, Sarah. But love doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. Your mother taught me that too. She was quiet for a moment, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out which angle would work. What if we invited you to Christmas after all? Would that fix this? You want to invite me to Christmas so I won't take your house? That's not what I meant. Sarah, let me ask you something. Do you remember what you said to me 3 days ago? Word for word? Her face flushed. Dad, I was stressed. I didn't mean... You said I represent everything you've moved beyond. You said I don't fit in your world. You laughed when Brad said, Thank God we don't have to pretend anymore. You recorded our conversation? I record all my business calls. Old habit. She stood up, pacing in the tiny space. So what is this? Revenge? You're going to destroy your own daughter for revenge? I'm not destroying anything, Sarah. I'm simply collecting on a debt. $7 million that you legitimately owe. We'll declare bankruptcy. Go ahead. I'll buy your debt in bankruptcy court too. We'll move somewhere else. With what money? Your credit's destroyed. Brad's hedge fund is hemorrhaging clients. You've got maybe 6 months of savings left, and that's if you stop spending like drunken sailors. Her face went white. How do you know about Brad's fund? When you own someone's debt, you learn things. She sat back down heavily, her hands shaking. Dad, what do you want from me? I looked at my daughter, really looked at her for the first time in years. I want my daughter back. Sarah left my apartment without another word, but she wasn't done fighting. Not by a long shot. Within hours, my phone started buzzing with text messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in months. Sarah was making calls, spinning her version of the story. My nephew David texted, Uncle Bob, Sarah says you're trying to steal her house? What's going on? My sister Janet called from Florida. Bobby, I don't understand. Sarah's crying, saying you've gone crazy with grief over Martha. But the real war began on social media. I don't use Facebook much, just the basic account I'd set up years ago to see pictures of my grandchildren. But that night, I got 15 notifications in a row. Sarah had posted on her Facebook page, and she'd tagged me. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally are the ones who hurt you most. Dealing with family toxicity during the holidays, praying for strength and wisdom. Hashtag blessed. Hashtag family first. Hashtag toxic relationships. The post had 43 likes and 17 comments in the first hour. Brad's mother commented, "Thinking of you both during this difficult time." Some people never change. Sarah's college friend Michelle wrote, "You're so strong." Family can be the hardest thing to deal with. Her neighbor from Harrison added, "We're here for you guys." Love and light. But what really got my attention was Sarah's follow-up post an hour later. When a parent uses money as a weapon against their own children, it shows their true character. Some wounds never heal, but we rise above. Teaching my children that love should never come with conditions. Parental alienation. She was actually using therapy language to describe me enforcing a legitimate debt. The comments on that post were even worse. "Sarah, you're handling this with such grace. Money can't buy class. Your father is showing his true colors. This is why we chose family. Blood doesn't mean everything." I screenshot every comment, every post, every single public word she was saying about me. But Sarah wasn't done. The next morning, she called 3 of our mutual friends people who'd known us both for years and gave them her version of events. Margaret Chen, my neighbor who'd watched Sarah grow up, called me that afternoon. "Bob, I just got off the phone with Sarah. She's very upset. She says you're foreclosing on her house because she didn't invite you to Christmas." "Margaret, did she mention that she owes $7 million she can't pay? She said you bought the loan specifically to hurt her." "I bought the loan because it was a business opportunity. The fact that my daughter happens to be the debtor is relevant." "Bob, she's your daughter." "Yes, she is. And yesterday she came to my apartment and offered to invite me to Christmas if I'd forgive $7 million in debt. Does that sound like love to you, Margaret?" Silence on the other end, but the most devastating blow came 2 days later. Sarah had somehow gotten my phone number to several local reporters. I started getting calls from the Westchester Journal News, the Hudson Valley Magazine, even a blogger who covered local interest stories. "Mr. Miller, we understand you're foreclosing on your own daughter's home. Would you like to comment? Mr. Miller, do you think using foreclosure as a family weapon sends the right message? Mr. Miller, your daughter says this is about control, not money. Is that accurate?" I didn't comment to any of them, but Sarah did. The article came out 3 days before Christmas. Local family feud turns financial. Father forecloses on daughter's $7 million home over holiday dispute. The reporter had interviewed Sarah extensively. She came across as the grieving daughter trying to protect her children from a vindictive grandfather. "My father has changed since my mother died," she was quoted as saying. "He's become bitter, controlling. When we tried to set healthy boundaries around the holidays, he retaliated by buying our mortgage and threatening to make us homeless." Healthy boundaries. The woman who'd spent $47,000 on Christmas decorations while owing $7 million was talking about healthy boundaries. But here's what Sarah didn't count on. The internet is forever. By the time that article was published, I'd already compiled a comprehensive file. Screenshots of every social media post, records of every interview she'd given, complete documentation of her public statements, and more importantly, I'd prepared my own evidence. Bank records showing the $2.7 million I'd given her over the years. The recording of our December 15th phone call. Brad's cryptocurrency trading history. Their credit card statements showing the $47,000 Christmas budget. Because if Sarah wanted to make this a public fight, I was ready to go public too. She'd just forgotten one crucial thing about her old man. I didn't build a $50 million empire by being nice. I built it by being thorough. The morning the newspaper article came out, I did something I hadn't done since building my first shopping center. I went to war. But this wasn't about emotion anymore. This was about evidence, facts, numbers that couldn't be spun or explained away. I spread everything across my folding table like a general planning a campaign. Bank statements going back 15 years, wire transfer receipts, canceled checks, every single financial transaction between me and Sarah, documented and categorized. The numbers told a story Sarah couldn't rewrite. September 2008, $43,000 for her BMW. Cash payment, full amount. May 2009, $60,000 for her final year at Wharton. Tuition, room, board, spending money. December 2012, $25,000 Christmas gift when she graduated business school. To help you get started, I'd written on the card. June 2019, $180,000 for her wedding. Every vendor paid in full, in advance, by me. August 2019, $500,000 for her first house, down payment. Wired directly to the title company. March 2020, $75,000. When Brad's investments went south during the pandemic. Just to help you through the rough patch. November 2021, $120,000 for little Emma's private school tuition, prepaid for 4 years. June 2022, $89,000 for their European vacation. The kids need to see the world, Sarah had said. December 2022, $47,000 when Brad's hedge fund missed bonus payments. Emergency family fund, I'd called it. Total, $2,739,000 over 15 years. Not loans, not investments, gifts. Given freely by a father who wanted his daughter to have every opportunity he'd never had. But the money was only part of the story. I had phone records, too. Every call I'd made to Sarah over the past 3 years, 423 attempts to reach my daughter. She'd answered 47 times. Text messages. I'd sent 216 texts asking about the grandchildren, about holidays, about family dinners. Sarah had responded to 31 of them. Most responses were one word, busy. Birthday cards. I'd sent cards to Emma and Michael every year since they were born. This year, for the first time, the cards came back marked return to sender. But the most damning evidence wasn't financial. It was social. I'd hired a private investigator. Yes, at 65, I was hiring PIs like some kind of detective story. His name was Frank Morrison, and he specialized in social media forensics. What Frank found made my blood boil. Sarah's Instagram account, set to private but accessible through her friends' public posts, told the real story of how she saw her father. A photo from last Christmas, Sarah, Brad, and the kids around a massive tree. Caption, grateful for the family we've chosen and the toxic relationships we've left behind. Dashed out boundaries, hashtag new beginnings. A photo from her anniversary dinner. 5 years of marriage, 5 years of growth. Learning that blood doesn't make family, love and respect do. Grateful, hashtag authentic. A photo from Emma's birthday party. Teaching our children that they don't owe anyone their time or energy, even family members who refuse to evolve. Hashtag healthy parenting, hashtag breaking cycles. Every single post was a coded message about me, her father, the man who'd given her everything. But Frank found something even better. Sarah's private text messages with her friend circle, obtained through a mutual acquaintance who'd shared screenshots. Sarah to her friend Jessica, October 15th. Dad showed up at Emma's soccer game wearing that awful old jacket. I literally pretended not to see him. Sarah to her friend Claire, November 3rd. Brad's parents are coming for Thanksgiving. Thank God Dad doesn't expect an invitation anymore. Can you imagine the clash? Sarah to her friend Michelle, December 1st. Dad keeps calling about Christmas. I'm going to have to be direct with him. This whole blue-collar, humble act is getting embarrassing. Sarah to Jessica, December 16th, one day after our phone call. Finally told Dad he's not welcome at Christmas. Brad's so relieved. We can actually enjoy ourselves now. Jessica's response, good for you. You've been carrying that dead weight for years. Sarah's reply, I know, right? It's like, I love him, but love doesn't mean I have to include him in my real life. My real life. I printed every screenshot, every bank record, every phone log. 347 pages of evidence that showed exactly who Sarah Miller Davidson really was, and who her father really was. The woman who'd spent nearly $3 million of my money was calling me dead weight. The woman whose mortgage I was now foreclosing on was talking about toxic relationships and healthy boundaries. But I had one more piece of evidence. The recording of our December 15th phone call. 43 minutes of Sarah explaining exactly why her father wasn't good enough for her sophisticated life. Everything documented, everything verified, everything ready for the courtroom of public opinion. Because if Sarah wanted to destroy my reputation, she was about to learn what real ammunition looked like. December 23rd, 2023, 7:30 p.m. I pulled my Honda Civic into the circular driveway of Sarah's $7 million mansion, right behind a Bentley and a Tesla. The house blazed with lights, every window glowing, the imported Italian marble columns wrapped in $15,000 worth of custom holiday garland. I could hear the party from the driveway. Laughter, classical music, the sound of people who'd never worried about a mortgage payment in their lives. I was wearing my JCPenney suit, the same one Sarah had been so embarrassed by. I'd pressed it carefully that morning and polished my cracked Payless shoes until they almost looked respectable. In my hands I carried a manila folder containing every piece of evidence I'd gathered, 347 pages that would destroy my daughter's narrative in front of everyone who mattered to her. The front door was answered by a young woman in a black dress, clearly hired help for the evening. "I'm Robert Miller," I said. "I'm here to see my daughter." "Oh, Mr. Miller, let me get Mrs. Davidson." I stepped into the foyer while she hurried away. The house was even more spectacular than I'd imagined. The chandelier above my head probably cost more than most people's cars. The marble floors were heated. I could feel the warmth through my thin-soled shoes. Through the archway, I could see the party. 43 people, according to my account, men in $1,000 suits, women dripping in jewelry, everyone holding crystal glasses filled with wine that probably cost more per bottle than my monthly rent. Sarah appeared in the archway, her face pale as snow. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "I'm exercising my rights as your creditor to inspect the property." Her voice dropped to an urgent whisper. "You can't be here. Not tonight. These people are about to meet the man who owns your house." Before she could respond, Brad appeared beside her. He looked exactly like what he was, an entitled hedge fund manager who'd never faced real consequences for anything. "Mr. Miller, you need to leave. Now. This is a private party." "Actually, Brad, since I own the mortgage on this house, I have legal right of access." "I can stay as long as I want." "You're embarrassing yourself," Sarah hissed. "Look around. Look at these people. Do you see how out of place you are?" And that's when I smiled. "Sarah, you're absolutely right. I am out of place here. Because unlike everyone else at this party, I actually own something." I raised my voice just enough for the nearest guest to hear. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for just a moment." The conversation in the room began to die down. Faces turned toward us. "Dad, don't you dare." "My name is Robert Miller. I'm Sarah's father, and I have something I'd like to share with all of you." Sarah's friend Jessica, the one from the text messages, stepped forward. "Sarah, who is this man?" "This is my father," Sarah said through gritted teeth. "He's having some difficulties since my mother passed." "Oh, I'm not having difficulties at all," I said cheerfully. "In fact, I've never been clearer about anything in my life." I opened my manila folder and pulled out the first document. You see, 3 days ago, my daughter called me and explained that I wasn't welcome in her house because I would embarrass her in front of sophisticated people like yourselves. She said I represent everything she's moved beyond. Brad stepped forward. "Sir, you need to stop this right now." "But here's what's interesting, Brad." Sarah seems to have forgotten to mention that I own this house. All $7,200,000 of it. The room went completely silent. That's right, I continued, pulling out the debt ownership papers. As of December 18th, I am the sole owner of the Davidson family mortgage, which means technically you're all partying in my house tonight. Margaret Chen, my neighbor, was among the guests. She knew me, knew my history. Bob, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the $2,739,000 I've given Sarah over the past 15 years. Money that built her education, her wedding, her lifestyle, and yes, the down payment on this very house. I pulled out the bank statements, holding them high enough for everyone to see. Sarah, would you like to tell your friends how much you spent on tonight's party while owing $7 million you can't pay? Dad, stop it. $47,000 on one night, while 3 months behind on mortgage payments. Gasped from the crowd. Someone's wine glass clinked against marble. Or maybe you'd like to explain to everyone how your husband, Brad, lost $1.8 million in cryptocurrency over the past 18 months. Brad's face went crimson. You have no right. I have every right. I'm your creditor now. I pulled out the printed screenshots of Sarah's social media posts. Or perhaps we should discuss Sarah's Instagram posts about toxic family relationships and deadweight family members. The same family member who paid for her MBA, her wedding, and her children's private school tuition. Sarah's friend Claire stepped forward. Sarah, is this true? It's complicated. No, it's not complicated at all, I said. It's quite simple. Sarah decided her father was an embarrassment to her new lifestyle, so she cut me out of her life, banned me from Christmas, told me I don't fit in her world anymore. I pulled out my phone and connected it to their sound system. Yes, I'd done my homework on their smart home setup, but don't take my word for it. Let's hear it in Sarah's own voice. Sarah's eyes went wide. Dad, you wouldn't. I pressed play. Sarah's voice filled the room. You represent everything we've moved beyond. The blue-collar background, the simple thinking, the small-town values that just don't work in our world anymore. Then Brad's voice. Tell him about the wine thing. Sarah again. When you came to our anniversary dinner last month? You ordered beer at Le Bernardin. Do you know how embarrassing that was? The room was dead silent now. 43 people listening to my daughter explain why her father wasn't good enough for her life. Then came the final blow. Brad's voice clear as a bell. Thank God we don't have to pretend anymore. Sarah's response. I know, right? It's such a relief. I turned off the recording and looked around the room, at the shocked faces, at the crystal glasses frozen halfway to lips, at the people who'd spent the evening enjoying my daughter's hospitality while she trash-talked the man who'd made it all possible. So, here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice calm and steady. Sarah and Brad have 64 days to pay me $7,200,000, plus interest, plus penalties. If they can't pay, this house goes to sheriff's sale. Sarah was crying now, mascara streaming down her cheeks. Dad, please. Not like this. Not in front of everyone. You wanted sophisticated people, Sarah. Well, sophisticated people understand contracts. They understand debt. They understand consequences. I looked around the room one more time. The bar's still open, folks. The food's still warm. Enjoy the rest of your evening. But you might want to get those business cards from Sarah and Brad tonight, because in 2 months, they're going to need new jobs. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. Oh, and Sarah? Merry Christmas. The room remained silent until I reached my car. Then, through the windows, I could see the explosion of conversation, the shocked gestures, the rapid departure of several guests. By the time I reached the end of their driveway, 3 cars were already pulling out behind me. Sarah's perfect party was over, and so was her perfect life. The eviction notice was served on January 22nd, 2024, exactly 30 days after the final foreclosure order. Sarah and Brad had tried everything in those final weeks. They'd hired lawyers who charged $850 an hour to tell them what I already knew. The debt was legitimate. The foreclosure was legal, and I had every right to collect. They'd attempted to declare bankruptcy, but I bought their bankruptcy debt too. $12 million cash talks louder than legal maneuvering. They'd even tried to sell the house privately, but with $7 million in outstanding liens, no buyer would touch it. The sheriff's sale brought $4,200,000. I kept the house. Brad's hedge fund collapsed 2 weeks later when his clients learned about his crypto losses. The financial press called it catastrophic mismanagement. He's working at a regional bank now, making $90,000 a year instead of $900,000. Sarah's social circle evaporated overnight. Amazing how quickly sophisticated friends disappear when the sophistication is foreclosed upon. Margaret Chen told me Sarah had to withdraw the children from private school and move into a rental apartment in White Plains. But here's what surprised me. Sarah called on February 14th, Valentine's Day. Dad, I need to apologize. I'm listening. I was wrong. About everything. About you, about what matters, about who I became. And I was hoping maybe we could try again. Start over. I know I don't deserve it, but I sat in my new house, yes. I'd moved into Sarah's old mansion looking out at the heated driveway she'd once been so proud of. Sarah, do you know what your mother used to say about second chances? No. She said they're not given, they're earned. What would I have to do? To earn one? I smiled, thinking of my grandchildren, Emma and Michael, who I hadn't seen in 6 months. Come to Sunday dinner, every week, for a year. Bring the kids. Cook the meal yourself. And every time you sit at my table, remember that respect isn't optional in a family. And then we'll see if my daughter is still in there somewhere. She came the following Sunday, cooked spaghetti and meatballs in the same kitchen where she'd once served $47,000 parties. We're still working on it. But now she calls me Dad again, instead of an embarrassment. And that, after everything, feels like the best return on investment I've ever made.